Thank you all for joining today's first of many monthly training sessions from PolicyEngine. We're going to be going through some of the capabilities of our software platform as applied to the autumn budget that will be released on Wednesday. I'm here with my colleagues, Nikhil Woodruff and Vahid Ahmadi. My name is Max Guinness, and really excited to go through some of these features with you, get your feedback on our models, and hopefully help you understand how you can use the platform for your own analyses on Wednesday and into the future. So just to provide some context, you're all familiar with how important Wednesday's announcement is with the new Labour government. It's going to move billions of pounds per year, and that's split across a number of different reforms that we've incorporated into our microsimulation model. And you'll see these, everything from employer national insurance to capital gains and how people will respond to potential changes there. We provide a lot of policy levers, behavioral assumptions, and also opportunities, as you'll see next month in more detail, to see this not just at the macro level, but how it affects individual households. And everything you're seeing here is completely free and open source. So we're a software platform that anyone can use, everything from the back end to our front end. You can see the code, and importantly, you can access it to model your own policy ideas. So everything from child benefit to universal credit, employer national insurance, all of those are levers you can adjust in the tool. And then we show you everything from distributional impacts, winners and losers, poverty, and revenue estimates over multiple years using the highest quality machine learning tools to generate the best data we can so that these are as accurate predictions as you'll find anywhere. So what we're going to do today is start off, as we've sort of done, introducing PolicyEngine. I'm going to turn it over to Nikhil to talk about some of the core features of the product. We'll go into a deep dive with employer national insurance contributions, where we think we've offered a sort of a novel way to approach that analysis. A fuller view of what you might be able to do on Wednesday, so looking at multiple policies, not just one at a time. Some advanced features, and then really looking ahead to next month and other features we're building. So finally, my name is Max Guinness. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PolicyEngine based in Washington, D.C. And I will now turn it over to Nikhil Woodruff and Vahid Ahmadi to go into the UK details. Nikhil, tell us how this all works.
Thank you, Max. Okay. All right. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about essentially what it is that is happening sort of behind the scenes, and what our model can predict and how it works. So PolicyEngine is sort of singular mission is to make it really easy to find out for a given tax benefits reform, what is the impact on the budget, what is the impact on poverty rates, what is the impact on the income distribution. So the way that we do that behind the scenes is we essentially have two things. We have a set of representative households, about 100,000 or so, that represents the UK household sector. So we have these people's incomes, their household structure, and their consumption and wealth. And then we also have a microsimulation model. And what a microsimulation model is essentially a function that takes those households and for each one calculates what is your income tax liability, what is your universal credit entitlement if you have that, what is all of these different sort of features of the tax benefit system. And when we combine those things together, that enables us to add all these things up at the national level and estimate for a given policy reform or for a given just tax benefit policy, what is the budgetary impact? How much do we think it would raise over the household sector in 2025 or 2027? But we're essentially making a model that predicts income tax, universal credit, etc., disposable income, and then combining that with a large microdata set of households to be able to get these sort of national projections. Basically, just where do we think the household sector is going to be in 2029 under different sort of policy assumptions. So our model has over 20 different tax benefit programs. It has basically all of the revenue impacts in terms of like direct tax on households and also direct outlays to households. So anywhere from the state pension, which is the larger end, to job seekers allowance at the sort of smaller end. We make sure that we're getting stuff right by having sort of hundreds of different automated tests. So every change that we make to the model, we test that we still think that someone is entitled to the same amount of universal credit as entitled to, or a different benefit calculator would say. And all of our code is open source on GitHub. We're using modern sort of technical frameworks, we're using Python, things like that. So all of our models are in a sort of constant state of development. But the end result of all of this is that we have a public web app which lets people go in and build their own policy or form and then simulate how that would affect households over a given sort of time period and geography. And then I also just want to mention, in terms of validation, I mean, all models are wrong, some models are useful. We try and make sure that the model is the best representation of the household sector and the tax benefit policy regime by calibrating against hundreds of different statistics from HMRC, the ONS, DWP, and the Office of Budget Responsibility. So we have a public validation dashboard. I think we'll share the slides as we're doing this, where you can go to and you can say, okay, I want to see how PolicyEngine compares to HMRC on the total amount of income tax paid by people earning over $1 million. And we sort of show the relative error in the survey that we get and our data improvements that we have in the model. And basically, we just show where we're at. Generally, we have quite a close level of fit with all of the statistics that we calibrate against. Okay, so what we're going to do now is essentially do a bit of a deep dive into employer national insurance contributions, just because these have had quite a lot of focus in terms of the recent budget, or soon to be recent budget. So employer national insurance contributions are a tax paid by employers. What we're going to be doing is basically looking at how does the current system work, and then using PolicyEngine as an example to score a reform for this. So currently, how it works is employers pay national insurance contributions for 13% or 13.8% of earnings above what's known as the secondary threshold, which is £9,100. So if you had someone earning £30,000 a year, you'd subtract 9,100 times by 13.8%, and that's how much the employer has to pay for this tax. There's been some speculation recently in the media about whether the UK government might change this by raising the rate by 1 or 2 percentage points. So we're going to basically see if we can model something like this in PolicyEngine. So for example, what if the government raised the rates from 13% to 14%? I should also note there's also some kind of behavioral assumptions that are relevant for this. And PolicyEngine does model these behavioral assumptions, and it does let you change these assumptions. So we recently published a piece with the Institute for Economic Affairs, essentially looking at different assumptions you can make about how employers would respond to this policy change and seeing how this affects the revenue impacts. So we'll sort of come on to that a little bit later. But right now, I'm going to jump over to PolicyEngine. So let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen, right? Okay, so I'm just walk through from first principles. Nikhil, you need to. Oh, can everyone see all of my screen, or just the first sort of quarter of it?
Just the quarter for me.
Just. I'm lucky enough to be able to see the 3 others. Perfect. Got it? Okay, great. All right, so, and anyone's welcome to sort of follow along if they'd like. If you go to policyengine.org, this is what you'll see. So this is our website. It has all of our publications as well. But most importantly, it has a direct interface with our microsimulation model. So anyone can go to our website and use the model themselves in order to score reforms. There are two sort of interface points because there are two different use cases for using the model. You might want to just calculate a household's tax and benefits. So like, what if you just want to work out how much benefits you're entitled to, which we can do because we need to be able to do that for the national stuff. Or you might want to go from the policy reform angle and build a reform, score it over like the UK in terms of revenue, and then maybe look at individual households. We're going to go straight into policy reform impacts. So I'm going to click on that button, and this takes me to essentially the policy calculator part of the app. And what we've got here is 3 panes, and in the middle, we've essentially got like, imagine there's kind of like a government file explorer layout. So all of the parameters that the government can play about with to like sort of build a reform. For example, the basic rate of income tax or the standard allowance for universal credit. We organize those parameters by government department. So essentially you can go into each of these folders and find a particular kind of parameter. So I could go for the capital gains tax rate here. Let's go and find the employer national insurance. But as we do that, we've got this pane on the right here that basically gives you a details view of what you're changing, and a pane on the left, which is kind of more like a summary view of what reform you've built up so far. So I'm actually going to search for a parameter because we've got a little search box at the top. And I'm going to search for the employer national insurance rates. And we can see all the other parameters we can adjust here, but let's just focus on this one for now. So I click on that, and it says NI employer rates. This is the NIC contribution rates by employers on earnings above the secondary threshold. We can see here's what it is. Here's what value it has over time, so 13.8%. And then we can change the value of it using this little tool here. So from 2024 onwards, and actually, let's say I only want to change things in 2025, because that's probably what Rachel Reeves would do. We can edit this text box. So 13.8%, let's go 14.8%. And as soon as I've done that and pressed enter, some stuff has changed. So on the bottom, we can actually see a visual representation of what my policy reform is doing. So we've got a kind of blue dotted line saying, if you plot this parameter over time, it would jump up a bit. And then on the left, we've got policy name. This is policy number 11. And we've got provisions, raise NI employer rates from 13.8% to 14.8% from 2025 onward. Now, we can also have a look at what are the assumptions that we might make here. And one of those that I mentioned was the employee instance of employer national insurance. And just to point this out, that as a baseline, we assume that employees bear all of the instance of employer national insurance. But you can change this assumption. I'm going to leave it as it is for now. But if we come back later, we could maybe look at how changing this affects the results. And then also just on the left, so I've built up a reform. I've got some more options that I can play with. I want to simulate this reform over the UK, but I could pick a country. I want to simulate it over 2024, but let's actually go for 2025 because nothing's happening in 2024 because it only takes effect in the next year. And then the baseline policy that I'm going to compare this against is current law. I could pick a custom baseline, like maybe I want to compare this reform against doing another reform, but I'm going to leave it as is for now. And then also, sometimes we might want to just use a kind of sized down version of the data to make it run a bit faster. But all that aside, I've got a big green button here that says calculate economic impacts. That is what I'm here to do, so I'm going to click on that. And for that, I will hand over to Vahid to talk a bit about the results.
Yeah, perfect. Hello, everyone. Okay, for the result, after pressing the green button, actually, in the middle, we will see some stuff to check for the result. The first tab is overview. You'll see this policy actually raises the revenue for the government by 4.7 billion pound, and actually it doesn't have any significant impact for the poverty rate, and also it decreases the net income of around 60% of people. The next tab is about the budgetary impact. So by clicking in the overall tab, you can see the different components of the impacts. For example, benefits spending, tax revenue, and the net income. The amount of the net impact is what you saw in the overview. And yeah, for the next tab, we also have the analysis on the distributional impact of income of the people. By clicking on the income button, you'll see the impact of this policy over different decile of the income distribution of the people. You can see that the richest decile actually has a kind of the most impacts by decreasing by these numbers that you can see. And you can see that if we move to the first deciles, the impact of this policy, actually, we can say that there's no significant impact. And this is the analysis by the over different decile of the income. And after that, we can move. So you can play around these kind of buttons to see what is the distributional impact over the wealth deciles and also income deciles. The next tab that I want to explain is the winners and losers. By clicking on the income decile, you'll see a graph explaining in each decile of the income distribution how much percentage of the individuals are affected by, for example, more than or less than lose or gain. For example, for the last decile, the number 10, you can see that the 6% of them has no change for their income, and 94% of them lose less than 5% in their income. And you can see that there are different, this policy actually has different effects on distribution of the people. And yeah, for the poverty impact, again, you can in the middle click this button to see the poverty rate. We have deep poverty and regular poverty. And again, you can see the impacts of the poverty based on the age or gender. For example, by clicking on the age, you can see that actually the poverty rate is not quite, I mean, it's again not significant to see. Yeah, for the inequality impact, we can see that this policy again reduces actually the Gini index for the inequality measurement by this amount that you can see, and also we'll calculate for top 10% share and also top 1% share. We have other tabs to actually see the result, but for now I will just conclude for these tabs. And yeah, for the last tab, you can see that actually Nikhil mentioned that you have the access for the code on the GitHub, and here you can just simply run this code in your Python notebook and see the result. You can change the parameter manually and yeah, run over the Python and see the result. This is the kind of overview for the result that we have, and I'll pass it to Nikhil to continue.
We actually
Thanks.
have a question from Graham Stark asking, why don't benefit payments go up, or did I miss that? Could you go back to that budgetary chart and take a look at that?
So we do see a slight increase in benefit spending. But
It's not too much. Yeah.
but it really looks quite small. I think that kind of makes sense because obviously this is phasing in as a like if employers take it out of wages, it would be proportional to your wages in the first place, and so nothing would happen for anyone earning under
Benefit
the secondary threshold, and for the people after that, you're getting a sort of 1% phase in with income. So I think we do get some increase in benefit spending, but really not that much at all. If we cut the secondary threshold, I'd expect a much bigger rise. Does that answer your question, Graham?
Thanks, Nikhil. Yeah, and anyone also feel free to drop more questions in the chat and I'll relay them over.
Okay. Yeah. And also,
I just, sorry, going back to the slides. Okay, here we go.
yeah, perfect. And if you want to just have a quick comparison between the treasury estimation and PolicyEngine estimation, we can see that in 2025, for example, this slide is about considering there is no behavioral response because the treasury assumption was that in our analysis, the incidence rate for the employee is 0%. So the result that I showed to you was about 100%, and this result is for 0 incidence rate. So for the treasury estimation, we will see for 2025 is 8.4 billion pound, and our estimation is 9. So you can see for 3 years here, for all 3 years, we are within 10% of the estimation for treasury estimation. The small difference here, we can say that maybe because we are using different sample and different data for the household side, we will see these kind of differences. But for all the years, we are within 10%. Yeah.
Thanks, Vahid. Okay. All right, and yeah, if people have other questions, I guess feel free to either save them now or put them in the chat and we can get back to them later. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to have a walk through is a sort of, let's imagine the autumn budget is happening right now. So we're going to kind of basically go through, a policy has been announced. Let's try and model it in PolicyEngine. Let's see how we could get the results out because we'll be doing this on Wednesday. So as media speculation has been going along and following the developments with the autumn budget, there have been various different policies that have been floated. There have been various different ideas about what Wednesday is going to look like. And as that's been happening, we've essentially just been doing the same process of plug in the impacts to PolicyEngine, pull out the revenue estimates, report on those. So we published recently a report looking at what were at the time the likely policy choices for the autumn budget. So estimating around a £23 billion revenue impact from 4 reported tax reforms. This was at the time when it looked like Rachel Reeves was going to raise employer pension contributions, national insurance contributions. So currently, the amount your employer pays to your pension as an employee is exempt from employer national insurance, but it looked like that was going to change. She's now since, or the government has now since ruled that out. But there were other parts that still look potential. So levying VAT on private school fees, raising capital gains tax to 24%, and also keeping the flagship £5.9 billion on average non-dom tax regime change. So that costing was taken from the Labour manifesto. So each of these numbers is a policy that we've plugged into PolicyEngine using the exact same method as we showed today, and gotten out. And we sort of built up the reforms over time. So we are capturing the interaction if there is any between these different policies. And that lets us pull out, so you can basically take the results from PolicyEngine and plug them into your own kind of analyses. So what we did here was we used the distributional impact outputs on PolicyEngine to basically say for each decile, how much revenue are we taking from it, and what's the marginal impact of each policy or form. Mostly focused on the top decile was the takeaway for this potential policy or form combination. So as a thought experiment, it's Wednesday. Rachel Reeves announces for 2025 that, and let's make up these policy reforms. So let's say the employer national insurance contributions rate is going up 1.5 percentage points. Let's say the secondary threshold is getting a significant cut to £125 a week. Let's imagine that all capital gains tax rates are increasing by a percentage point. And that VAT is, as expected, going on private schools at 20%. So we're going to basically walk through putting this on PolicyEngine in the same way that we might do if it was actually announced on Wednesday, and estimating how much it would raise for the government and what it would look like for the income distribution and poverty rates. While I do this, if anyone wants to put their guess in at how much this policy would raise, I think it would be kind of interesting to see who gets closest. But I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so let's go back to the homepage. And I'm assuming everyone can see. Yes. Okay. So let's go in the same as last time, compute policy or form impacts. And the first one was, let me remind myself, 1.5 percentage points on employer NIC's rate. So let's have a look. Employer rates, found a parameter, 2025 onwards, and 1.5% is 50.30. Okay. Let's also look at what else we had. So the secondary threshold is getting cut to £125 a week. Let's have a look for this. Okay, so thresholds, we've got a folder here. I could search for it, but I think it's useful to go through the parameter tree. Secondary threshold, and we're going to go, it's currently £175 a week, but let's put that to 125 and press enter. So we can see this is what the policy would have been doing, but this is what we're going to be doing instead. So lowering it and keeping it lower. Next, we've got capital gains tax rates increased by a percentage point. So let's have a look. HMRC, capital gains tax, that's where we'd expect it to be. Let's just go through the folder here. We've got 3 rates and 1 threshold parameter, which is the annual exempt amount. The basic rate is currently 10%. Let's put that at 11. The higher rates is currently 20%. Let's put that at 21. And there isn't technically an additional rate. In law, it's higher and additional rate together, but we split this out to make it easy to model. So we've got 3 capital gains tax rates going up. And then the last one was private school VAT. So let's just have a look for that. Private school VAT rates 0 in baseline law, and let's go 20. So the UK, let's simulate in 2025 and calculate economic impact. So this is going to sort of run for a few minutes. Does anyone have any guesses about the revenue impacts?
Daniel guessed 45 billion.
Okay.
Your guesses.
Nice.
While that's going, Nikhil, could you tell us how the behavioral responses look in this simulation you're running now?
Oh, yes. Let me share this window. Well,
back to the quarter of your screen.
Of course, that makes complete sense. Let's have a look. Oh, well, so actually, well, by default, if we Okay, let's have a look. Allow to share screen.
Don't switch it.
Share entire screen. Okay, interesting.
When you share, don't switch your screen.
Sorry, one sec.
Okay.
Share window. Still black. Do you think you could go to the PolicyEngine? So maybe share yours. While we're working on this, we currently assume zero behavioral response to policies by default. That means capital gains don't change and labor supply doesn't change. But what we do is we have a policy parameter or an economic parameter for the elasticity of capital gains with respect to the tax rates. So I think the standard assumption is that this is negative 0.7. So for a given percentage increase in the tax rates, you'd expect capital gains to fall by 0.7%, 0.7 times whatever increase in the tax rate you're having. We also have labor supply elasticities. So we have the elasticity of employment income with respect to the net of tax marginal wage and the elasticity with respect to income. So you're just kind of capturing the responsiveness of like how much people work more because they need more money, because they need enough money, and how much people work more because there's a reward to working because of a high marginal wage. Okay, can I share my screen yet? Let's have a look. I'm not sure Vahid has permissions. Max, could you give Vahid permissions to share?
Yes.
Or maybe I put the
You're the
link
host
in the
now,
slides.
so I think.
If you could try sharing your screen, Max.
Sure. You are the host, so.
Thank you, Zoom.
Try one more time.
How do I make you host?
Well, I can share my screen,
Okay.
but
Let's do that.
You can make Vahid host as well.
Okay.
He has his stuff up.
Do you want to try sharing your screen? If you just go to the impact page, it's in the slides.
Sorry, you're asking me or Vahid?
You, Max. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Yes. Happy to. Okay. I guess you do need to make me host again. Sorry for the tech stuff. Here.
Okay.
Reclaim host.
Go for participant and then.
Here you go. Okay.
I think we have it. All right, if you follow the link on the It's Wednesday slide.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yep,
Is this
all good.
Okay.
All 4 quarters.
Yep. Okay. Big reveal. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, actually, the good feature from the PolicyEngine that I want to emphasize is that you can build policies top of each other. So, for example, you apply a policy and you want to change it or build a policy based on that. You can just simply, by the left-hand side, you can just simply do that. For the result, from the overview tab, again, you can see that we have a 14.7 billion raises in the government revenue, and the impact in the poverty rate actually has a kind of a small impact on that. And we can see that this policy decreases the net income of the people. 66% of the people are affected. And Max, could you please go for the budgetary impact? Yeah, again, in the budgetary impact tab, you can see that the net income, net impact, benefit, spending, and tax revenue. You'll see different components of the budgetary impact and distributional impact. In the tab, you can see for example, the income decile and the relative tab. Again, here we have impact over different decile in the income distribution, so you can compare the poor decile and also rich decile. For example, what is the effect of this policy of changing the net income of household over the distribution? And from the winner and loser tab, again, we can see here a kind of comparison between in each decile how much percentage of the people in each decile are affected by this policy. For example, how much lose less than 5 or gain less than 5. And for example, you can see that in the 10th decile, yeah, they're affected yeah, by 5%, lose more than 5% by 40.8 of people. And yeah, could you please go for the poverty impact? Great. In this tab, again, you can see that the poverty impact by age or gender, this policy actually increases the poverty rate by a small number here. But you can see, for example, for the seniors or working age adults or children, there are different impacts. And for the inequality impact, and also we can see that for the top 10%, how they are affected by the policy change, and also the changes in the Gini index. You can see there is relatively a small number in changes of Gini index from this policy. And yeah, that's it. I pass it to Nikhil for continuing.
Thank you. Okay. Cool. So a little less revenue than I think we expected in the chat. But I think the capital gains part of that will probably be quite a small one, considering the strongly negative elasticity response. Cool. Let me see. Okay, advanced features. Okay, so now we're just going to talk a little bit about the other parts that are like what else PolicyEngine can do that's not just on the app that we've shown today. So next slide, please, Max. Okay, so I'd say probably like 80% of what PolicyEngine is used for is static kind of microsimulations of individual policies and restricted to those impacts that we've shown today. But we can extend the kind of complexity of the reforms that we look at. So one of the, I guess, most talked about features about different tax reforms is what is the impact on labor supply? So as we mentioned earlier, we allow people to specify the income elasticity and the substitution elasticity. So you can plug in the standard kind of OBR assumption or Congressional Budget Office assumption in the US of how people respond to a change in income versus a change in wages. And we will basically take those assumptions, two values, and we will incorporate those in our simulation. So if you added in an assumption for income and substitution effects, and then also added in like a basic rate tax rise, we will subtract people's labor supply response from their employment income and capture that effect. You can also plug in custom assumptions about the economy. So, for example, you could find the parameter in PolicyEngine for wage growth over the next 5 years and say, what would it do to government revenues if everyone had an extra percentage point of employment income per year? Or the same thing for inflation or mortgage rates, things like that. We also have a household API. So currently, this is in use in the US as well. Currently, for benefits calculations, you can either go to PolicyEngine.org and plug in an example household, which we'll come to in future sessions, and calculate taxes and benefits for that household under baseline policy or form. Or you can link up PolicyEngine's API with your own organization's maybe benefit calculator to send us the request in a kind of machine readable format, and then we'll send it back with the universal credit amount filled in. And then finally, this is all written in Python in the model. So all of the calculations that you've seen today, you can reproduce. They're all the latest open source version of the model. So anything that you see on the app, you can click on the reproduce in Python section that we saw in the outputs tab. And that will basically just let you run, it'll give you a snippet of Python code to run that will reproduce the numbers that you're seeing on our website. And then you could maybe take out a sort of closer slice at that. Maybe you want to look at the average effects for men versus women, or any other sort of custom deep dive analysis that we haven't got on the website. So those are just sort of a few of the features that aren't on the web app, but you can do with the model. Next slide, please. And just for some more background on where the things that you can do outside the web app and the things that you can do on the web app sort of fit together. Here's basically how our platform is structured. So at the very top, what we've gone through today is the PolicyEngine.org web app, which is an interface for our model. So that's intended for basically anyone who's interested in policy. It will probably require some knowledge of, you know, what are the different taxes called, but we want it to be as approachable as possible outside of that. A level down, we've got the PolicyEngine API. So if there are any machines on this call, you can plug into a household, send us a short description of that household in a file, and we will throw back the benefit and tax expanded version of that household. A level down below that, you've got the PolicyEngine UK Python package, which people who can code can import. You could run PolicyEngine on your own custom data, or you could maybe create 10,000 different policies procedurally and find out which one is the best. Those are the kinds of things that you could use the Python package for. And then below that, we have a sort of core infrastructure, which is more kind of just making things run fast. But yeah, so that's kind of like the hierarchy of where the things that we've built fit together. But we're trying to make it so that the PolicyEngine.org web app is usable by as many people as possible, and it's clear when to move down to the sort of more complex use cases. Next slide, please. And I just want to also mention we do have some documentation, and we do have code that is of sort of readable quality. So we use modern frameworks for this kind of thing, Python, YAML, so if people know how to interface with those, you can. And we have a public documentation site, which is linked on our website. Basically, for each program that we model, we have some documentation about our implementation, our assumptions, what we find out from the policy by implementing it, things like that. And then next slide, please, Max. I'll pass over to Max for looking ahead.
Great. I'd start by saying, so yeah, thank you, Nikhil and Vahid, for going through all those examples. I hope this gives a sense of where the product is today. We're continually sort of enhancing it, both on the feature side and also the documentation. So if you have suggestions on what could be clearer in any part of the software, please do reach out. This, as I mentioned at the beginning, will be a new monthly training series. And I want to give special thanks to the Nuffield Foundation that supported this and our future webinars, as well as a number of features that we'll be developing in the next year. Really excited to share those as we produce them. So for next month's training, which is going to be also last Monday of the month, so Monday, the 28th of November at 2 p.m., we're going to recap any potential changes that have occurred through the autumn budget on Wednesday that we may have missed. There's some ambiguity, especially around, for example, national insurance, but we'll do a final report on all of those. We didn't really go through the household calculations today. So if you want to explore how different policy reforms affect a specific household, sort of what the shape is with respect to how it affects them depending on their earnings or other factors, we produce a lot of data visualizations and analytics around that we'll go through next month. And our deep dive topic for next month also will be the microdata enhancement. So we integrate data from the Family Resources Survey, Survey of Personal Incomes, Living Costs and Food Survey, and the Wealth and Assets Survey. All of those we bring together with machine learning, and we calibrate it to a very broad range of targets. So we'll sort of go through how that works in practice and some performance measures as well. So please do save the date for next month. We're really excited to go through that with you all. And with that, we have 10 minutes for any Q&A. Feel free to ask in the chat or also just unmute and ask any questions you have.
Hi, yeah, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Hi, yeah, it's Dan from Energy UK. Really like the tool. It's really impressive. I think it'll be really useful for us in our work. One thing that we would be keen to look at the effect on is looking at a pay per mile taxation policy, and how, if that were to replace fuel duty, what impact that would have. Is there any scope or capacity that could be incorporated into your model in the future?
I can give a bit of background on what we do right now. Thanks for the question. And yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting idea. What we do right now is we have fuel duty modeled. So we have kind of half of it, which is like if we replaced fuel duty. We impute petrol and diesel spending, and then we also derive their sort of litres of consumption from that. So we're pretty close on like modeling fuel duty in terms of closeness to the OBR's estimate. I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked into how the pay per mile scheme would work, but I imagine it sounds like you'd have to impute miles you've transported in a car for each household in our survey data set. So if there are data sources that have some description of households, maybe demographics or incomes, and some measure of like how many miles they've traveled, if that data sort of exists, then I think it's definitely feasible to have an estimate, because we can impute that data over to our data. So yeah, most likely there's some way of doing that.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Daniel, we might also reach out for your guidance, if that's all right, on finding those kind of data sources.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can get in touch afterwards.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Maybe I'll ask one question for you, Nikhil and Vahid. Compared to the other sources that people might be seeing in the news around estimates around the autumn budget provisions, what parts are only available in PolicyEngine? What parts would we expect are going to be substantially different in PolicyEngine compared to other sources, and why?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think the reason why there'll be different estimates, they'll probably be all close to each other, but they'll be different for the same set of policy reforms, is mostly down to the different data sets that people use. So generally, government models tend to use one particular data set for like capital gains and one particular data set for income changes. So you'd expect the government to use it's like an asset level data set for capital gains. You've got sort of self-assessment returns that we have in a large admin data set for income data. And then you've got the household survey for anything that you can't do from those two. So capital gains is probably going to be scored by looking at that admin data set. employer national insurance will probably have a cost estimate from looking at a sample of tax returns. And what we do is we try and we impute from the admin data set that we have on incomes, and we impute from some administrative statistics on capital gains. So we're kind of trying to replicate as much of the properties of those data sets in our household data set in order to be as consistent with those, but there will be some difference. The reason why we use the household data set is because it gives the PolicyEngine model the ability to add things that aren't on those other data sets. So government will have probably one of the best estimates of the revenue impact of capital gains or employer national insurance, but they won't have estimates for the distributional impact that's like consistent with the rest of the, maybe like putting low-income households on the same map as like high-income households. So whatever we model in PolicyEngine, we're trying to keep like the full picture of the economy in one sort of like in one view of it. But yeah, inequality, like the Gini index of disposable household income, you can't do unless you're putting everything into one household data set. So there'll be some difference in budgetary impacts, probably not too much, but the inequality, poverty, distributional impacts are probably best in a household model, which we've adopted.
Great. And then the behavioral responses for some of these programs like capital gains could also, even conditional on the data sets, produce different results. Is that right? How big are those?
Yeah, well, I mean, pretty big for capital gains. I think we found when we looked at the 20 to 24% rate change that was floated at one point, we got about a 3.4 billion estimate with no behavioral responses. We got 1.6 with a negative 0.5 elasticity, and we got 900 million with a negative 0.7. And 0.7 to maybe like well, less than 0.7 is the range of kind of accepted elasticities, which is the norm for those. So pretty big range. But also some models include things like the transitory elasticity, so looking at whether people will like have the same capital gains but time it so that they try to sort of minimize their tax liability, whereas we sort of consider the medium run effects of the instance of capital gains, and sort of don't simulate the sort of individual timings of disposals for that kind of thing. So there's kind of some nuances of different behavioral responses, but I think if over the medium run, you'd expect them to sort of roughly sort of be in the same ballpark.
And that sort of falling revenue by about half, considering behavioral responses, also applies to our estimate of employer national insurance, which fell about 43 to 49%, depending on the policy. You can, we'd invite you to read the reports that we have on the IEA blog, and we'll have a report on capital gains soon as well. Thanks for clarifying those sort of data versus behavior changes we can all expect in the news. Any other questions from the audience? All right, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Again, next month's will be 28th of November at 2 p.m. Feel free to invite others who may have missed this one. We'll go through some of the high-level content that we did today as well to orient people on how to use the tool, but you can expect novel information as well. So, and feel free to reach out at hello@policyengine.org if you have any questions as well. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.